Hey everyone, so today's video is going to be my iPhone 12 wish list. This isn't going to be an exhaustive list, however it will be a list of things that would help me out in terms of my personal usage with iPhones. So the first thing on the list is 4K 60 camera switching. Now the iPhone currently does already have the ability to switch between lenses whilst recording at 4K 30. However, most of the video I film and most of my uploads, as you will have seen, are recorded at 4K 60. And for this reason, this is a feature that I would like to see added. Currently, if you switch between lenses at 4K 60, you're basically simulating zoom. You're not actually using the three different lenses. The only alternative option from that would be to actually stop recording, switch lens, and then restart recording. Whereas if you're on 4K 30, you can literally zoom from the ultra wide down to the wide and into the telephoto, all without having to cut your recording. And that's what I would like to see added to the 4K 60 mode. Right, so the next thing on the list is better low light on the ultra wide and telephoto. This is both for photos as well as video, however primarily this is video. Obviously with the photos you have night mode and you have deep fusion that can help out a lot with photography. However, what I primarily use my iPhone for is generally video, and for the most part I tend to have to stick the standard wide angle lens just because of the aperture, and it allows more light in with both the telephoto as well as the ultra wide in particular. That would be a lens that would be very useful for me for my YouTube videos. However, the times that I can actually use it without inducing a lot of grain or a really soft image, it means that it limits how I can actually make use of that lens. Most of my videos I try and do during the day, however a lot of the videos, as you will have seen, is set in a dark setting. Therefore the wide angle lens is the only one that I can actually utilize. Right, so the next one on the list is color accuracy between the lenses. Now as good as Apple have actually made it on the iPhone 11 Pro Max, which I have currently, and generally in good lighting you can pretty much get away with switching between them, and obviously the lower frame rate means that any slight jump between them kind of hides the differences somewhat. However, once again, because of the setting that I tend to use mine in, what I have noticed is when I switch between them, obviously the colors of the lights, the LEDs, the OLED screen that I tend to record with my LG TV, I've noticed quite a bit more in terms of the color shift, and it's mainly the ultra wide that I tend to find switches most. Right, so the next one on the list is video bokeh. Now this isn't something necessarily that I'd really have to have, however it's something that other manufacturers, Samsung in particular, introduced almost as a gimmick, and it was introduced by various manufacturers with mixed results. As with the bokeh photos, when Apple first introduced that, at the time it was a lot better until the Pixel came out than anything else out there in terms of how they actually processed and produced this particular type of photo. And even right now, obviously you have the live viewfinder, so you can in effect do a screen recording and get a similar kind of video bokeh from that. However, that's something that, if possible, if it's something that Apple are working on, then I think that their implementation of it could be better than most of the other manufacturers out there. As with most features, Apple tends to try and perfect something before they bring it out, rather than just rushing features to the market and releasing them. Right, the next one is actually quite a big one for me, so that's dual and triple lens recording. Now this is something that was actually showcased by Filmic Pro at the iPhone 11 launch last year, and having purchased the Filmic Pro app and waited, obviously they released the free app DualShot, I believe it's called, and I kept waiting. The DualShot is limited to 1080p, and I actually got in contact with Filmic Pro developers, and what they actually said was, at the moment they're limited by the restrictions that Apple have actually put in place, so they can't get the bitrate that they would like to have with their Filmic Pro Extreme mode, and because of that they're not enabling more than 2 lens recording, and they're not also enabling 4K recording. So at the moment their free app is limited to 1080p, which to me it isn't really any good. I use it just for casual fun videos around the house with the kids and stuff like that, but I wouldn't be comfortable using that as, for example, any of the videos on my channel. The benefit of obviously having that double or triple lens recording is the fact that I wouldn't have to choose any type of focal length or any setup in that way, where I can literally have 3 different sets recording at the same time. So that was something that obviously pushed me towards the Filmic Pro app. However, they weren't very honest in terms of, at the time they obviously I believe at the launch event they were very keen on pushing out the fact that it was a feature that was coming soon, so they haven't actually stuck to it. It's partly down to Apple. From what Filmic Pro actually told me, it was down to the API that was actually released to them. The restrictions put on that mean that basically they can't do what they promised, but on the flip side they weren't really very forthcoming in terms of enabling 4K recording, even with what they already have. So even with dual cameras, even at a lower bit rate, give the user a choice. The other slight issue with that is obviously the Filmic Pro app was not a cheap app. I can't remember exactly how much it was. In the UK it was something like 22 or 25 pounds, which for an iPhone app is quite expensive, and most of their sales would have been done on the premise of that particular feature. Now obviously they've gone out and released the free application. However, for all the people that have paid for it, they haven't actually gained anything from that. All they've done is they've put the money in, and everybody has got something for free just to keep Filmic Pro's kind of reputation ticking over, because obviously people were starting to ask questions as to where this feature was. So this is something that if Apple can actually just introduce natively into the app themselves, obviously we've seen over the years Apple aren't very forthcoming when it comes to making changes. It took so long, iOS up to iOS 13 point something, before we even got the ability to switch camera settings within the camera app. So I'm not holding my breath on this, but it's something that would benefit me, and I think a lot of people could find use for it, especially for home videos, where if you're making videos of kids and stuff like that, you don't have to choose your framing. You can literally have it record all 2 or all 3 or even possibly all 4 lenses at the same time, and then just pick and choose afterwards, and it gives you the ability to obviously make any amendments that you wish to do. The slight caveat to that is that obviously Apple already have something with their out of frame recording, so it's where they kind of utilize other lenses, so then you can either crop in or crop out from your main standard wide angle lens. So they already have something in place that is not exactly what I would want, but it's along the lines of what is possible. So it's something that I'm hoping that they could possibly introduce with the iPhone 12. And obviously this is all to do with the 12 Pro Max. I wouldn't expect these kind of features to be put onto the normal standard iPhone 12s. Right, so the next one is it's an actual bug or design flaw with the iPhone 11 Pro Max, and possibly with the 11 as well. It's basically because the lenses actually protrude so far out, it causes a lot of haloing bright light sources. So if you're outdoors and you get the sun reflection or anything like that, and with mine videos in particular, I've done a few test videos with the Dolby patterns and things like that, and whenever you've got a set a focused white light in the middle of the TV, for example, unless I have my tripod bang smack in the middle and pointing straight at the TV, what I've noticed, I get a mirroring, and a kind of haloing around the main light source, and that's basically where it's almost being bounced around in the glass and the lenses of the iPhone 11 Pro Max, and it's causing a mirror image of that, whatever the light source is. So I've seen it with logos where it'll replicate the logo upside down underneath it. I did a Dolby Vision test video that I uploaded recently, and in that, I believe in the first few shots before I actually adjusted the camera, you could see a mirroring of the small white circle. If I can find the video, what I'll do is I'll insert it over the top of this video. But that's something that for the most part it's not going to be that big of a problem, but when it comes to me trying to set up certain scenes and shots in these videos, I find it quite annoying because I end up having to make adjustments to the camera that I didn't really want. It's not framing it in the way that I wanted to, and that's primarily just trying to get rid of that haloing. Whether this is from the internal lens structure or whether it's because of that new lens that sticks out so far. From the early leaks that we've seen for the iPhone 12, it does look like what Apple have done is, rather than having the big ring around the lenses, the actual top lens ring is going to be shallower, and hopefully this will actually prevent this particular issue and help actually reduce some of that haloing. Right, so the next one may be a little bit subjective, but I've put down better quality battery. Now, this isn't just an increase in milliamp hours, which is always appreciated, but what I've found in particular with the 11 Pro Max, and bear in mind that I've had since the iPhone 6 and 6S Pluses, I've upgraded my phone every single year, mainly for the camera improvements, sometimes for the battery, sometimes for the screen, various different reasons. But every year I've been upgrading my phones, and generally even after 1 to 1.5 years usage, because of the release cycles being staggered and they've never quite lined up since probably the iPhone 7 Plus days, because of that reason, I found that after say a year's usage, my battery at worst it would be down to 97% on battery health. With this particular iPhone, even what are we, 8-9 months into ownership, I got this iPhone 11 Pro Max on release date in the UK, which would have been around late September, I believe, September 2019. So from then till now, and we're on, what's the date today? It's the 6th of May 2020. So in that period, this iPhone has actually dropped more on its battery health than any other iPhone that I've previously owned, apart from the very early ones, the 4s and the 4Ss. Those ones, just because of how small the batteries were in terms of capacity, they obviously depreciated a lot faster because there was less for it to lose. With this having had the biggest battery Apple have ever put in a phone, I was actually quite surprised when I updated my iOS version, and I noticed it was already down to 95%. I've not checked it recently. What I might do is just insert another clip over the top, just pointing out what it's currently on, but generally after 2 to 3 years usage, I would still expect it to be in the high 80s. So for it to have dropped this much already is a little disappointing. Now, with a caveat that obviously this year in particular, I have used this very heavily for both video recording, which is obviously being done at a higher bitrate when I'm using Filmic Pro, for video production using LumaFusion, and then also video uploading as well. So that's a lot of heat that's actually been going through both the phone and the battery. And then obviously when I've been doing all of this, I've tended to try and shoot maybe 2 or 3 videos a day just to get enough footage, and then I'll slowly do all the editing and uploading. And for that reason, I've been fast charging a lot more. Generally, what I tend to do is just charge my phone overnight on a wireless charger. It's the same thing I've done since the iPhone 10, and the 10, the 10s Max, and this one up until a certain point had all been fine. I've never had any issues with that way in charging. Obviously with iOS 13, I believe they introduced the feature where it'll gradually charge up overnight if you're in a regular pattern, and it can see that. But I think obviously the fact that I've been using the fast charging, and I only started using the fast charging after I actually noticed it was dropping off. Up until that point, the point where it was at 95%, I would still only charge using the wireless charger, because I didn't have a need for it to charge up that fast. I always put it on charge overnight. So for that reason, basically the next one was obviously the fact that if they can, I don't know whether it's the particular type of battery, the density, or the design, or what, but if they can try and work on that just so then it holds charge, and also if they work something on the dispersion of heat, because the phone does get physically hot when you're doing any type of intensive task. Right, so the next one on the list is a smaller notch. This one is pretty obvious. Most people would prefer the smaller notch just to be able to get a bit more status bar area, and obviously battery percentage, time, things like that. You can populate it with other things, VPN status, stuff like that. It's pretty obvious, and obviously it'll just freshen up the front of the phone as well. I'm not really one who bothers too much about the look and design of a phone beyond its first generation, because as most people find, once you get any type of tech, once you've used it for a little while, all the kind of physical features and things like that, they just kind of blend away, just as the notch did originally. Everybody was hating on the notch before the iPhone 10 officially came out, and then once people started using it, and their usage, day-to-day usage, and the way that they actually got used to the gestures and everything like that, it kind of just blends away, and you don't even notice those kind of things. So obviously we've had it for 3 years now, so just the fact that if they can give us a smaller notch, it'll just change up the design a little. What I am hoping is, from the early leaks and renders that we've seen, the earpiece has obviously moved up, and the rest of the notch physically itself is still the same in terms of the components by the looks of it. They've not combined any components, but the speaker module is obviously moved to the top. Now what I'm hoping is that they by doing so, they haven't actually reduced in terms of the quality of the sound that comes out of there, because the speakers on these phones are very good, and that's something that obviously I wouldn't want to sacrifice the speaker output just to get that smaller notch if I had to choose between the two, because as I say with most things, audio is generally more important than the video. So generally most people could probably live with a slightly bigger notch and have slightly better audio, but hopefully that's not a choice that we'll have to make, and that's something that Apple have already worked around. Right, so the next one on the list is a 120 Hertz display. As with most of the flagships out nowadays, almost all of them probably already encompass either a 90 or 120 Hertz display. It's something where Apple have actually been quite lucky in the way that iOS operates and the animations that they actually put into iOS, that they can get away with having a 60 Hertz display for obviously all of these years. But as soon as you see a faster refresh rate, you never want to go backwards, and that's the case with 120 Hertz displays as well. What you get from buying a flagship iPhone is you're buying the very best in terms of matured technologies and materials. So obviously the fact that I think they're still probably one of the only manufacturers that actually use stainless steel, which gives a really rigid structure to the phone. I mean, these phones feel really solid, and that obviously you're paying a premium for that. So alongside that premium, they obviously down the line also removed certain features, and 3D touch was one of the ones that I actually really liked. However, for the sake of a bigger battery and hopefully a faster display in terms of refresh rate, it's something that I don't actually mind too much. Between the 10s Max and the 11, I kind of got used to haptic touch. However, if I had a choice, obviously I still would have preferred 3D touch, because it was something that was very unique in the way that it was implemented by Apple. But obviously by getting rid of that and that layer, I'm hoping that they've obviously opened up a way in which they can now get 120 Hertz OLED display into the iPhone 12 Pro Max, and that's something that I would be looking forward to. So the next one on the list goes alongside the display, so it's basically to just reduce the bezel size. Now, compared to most Android manufacturers out there who've gone down the routes of waterfall displays and things like that, which personally I'm not a fan of, I still prefer having a bezel that you can actually see. That's because any overflow screen is pretty much useless, and it's generally left for gimmicks such as side notifications on the early Note phones and things like that. But what I would like to see is, rather than increasing the size, the physical size of the chassis, for them to reduce the bezel as much as possible. I do like the fact that Apple have a consistent border all the way around. So unlike most of the other flagships, they'll have very thin bezels on the sides, but their top and bottom chins are going to be, they're normally always different sizes as well. So the fact that they keep a consistent width all the way around, I do like that about the iPhones. However, I would like to see that reduced, and that will obviously help them. If you can reduce that bezel size, it means that your chassis doesn't have to be as big. Obviously the next iPhone we're hearing is going to be 6.7 inch display diagonally, which is already getting bigger than the 11 Pro Max. So obviously if they can pinch any millimeters from that bezel, not only will it give it that more modern and futuristic design, but it'll mean that the physical structure of the phone doesn't need to actually be that much bigger. Right, and the final one on the list is the new blue color that we've seen rumored around the web already. This is obviously, the colors themselves, they never really bother me too much. In the early years, I used to always go for the black. I would personally buy the gray or the black, whichever the dark colors that were available. And then for my wife, I'd normally get whatever the new color was. So when the gold came out, I got her the gold one. When the rose gold came out, I got her the rose gold. This year I actually went for the green one just to change things up a bit. But obviously now we don't have that issue where you have to worry about a white bezel on the front of the screen. That Apple got away with that some years ago now. So that's something that just to change it up. Obviously the new design, if it does come out with that blue color, I think it will be, it'll sell out. I think it'll be very hard to get hold of, but if you can get hold of one, it's something that I think will be really nice. And just something I wanted to add on to that, the colors and the way that iPhones hold up over time, I've been really impressed with. So obviously most people's favorite design, going back to the iPhone 5 days, which is obviously what the new iPhone 12 is going to kind of copy in terms of the boxy kind of shape. The chamfered edges on those were notorious for scratching away, and the anodized coating would basically just disappear. In the early days when I had mine, I actually put skins on it just to try and protect it, clear ones as well as just your normal kind of D-brand type skins, and dealt with the issue that way. I usually used to use a very thin case, as I have on my 11 Pro Max. But the stainless, since they've introduced the stainless steel bands, the coating that they actually put on top of it, I don't know whether it's an anodized coating or it's some other type of coating that they actually put onto there. But the iPhone 10 that I bought was a space gray or black one, and that still looks perfect. The 10s Max that I bought 2 years ago, similarly again, and similarly with this iPhone 11 Pro Max, where I've got it in the green color. I've only ever had a very thin case on the phone, and because of my day job, it does come in contact with, I get a lot of dust and lint and stuff in my pockets, and I'm generally changing clothes and chucking the phone around quite a bit. I don't damage the phone in any way, so the phone is still in perfect condition, but I don't I'm not wiping it down every day either. So the way that it actually holds up against just fine abrasions, scratches, things like that, I'm really impressed with that side of it. There was also one other one that I had initially on the list, but I removed it, and that's basically, I'm hoping that Apple actually continue with the matte frosting on the back, the etched glass, because whilst it is very slippery, in that particular design, the Bokeh design, I don't think it'll actually be an issue, because the sides of the phone, if they're stainless steel and they're coated in this same kind of coating, then that itself is actually very grippy. That's another benefit of it. Aluminium, even if it's coated, is generally quite slippery compared to the stainless steel with that particular type of coating on it. So that's a benefit of the stainless steel bands, that they've probably not intended for it to be there, but it's just a bonus that's come along with it. So yeah, the final one is obviously the blue color, and obviously the hoping for the kind of frosted look, possibly extending onto the camera lens and changing that up a bit as well. But obviously with the last year's this year's model, the 11 Pro Maxes, they did it opposite on the standard one compared to the Pro version. So the standard one was glossy back and matte cameras, and the Pro model was a matte back with a glossy camera section. So I hope they continue that again for the iPhone 12. So that concludes the actual main list. As I said at the start, it's not an exhaustive list. This isn't something where these are the only things or these must be in it. These are just things that for me personally, I would really like to have seen added or to be retained, and hopefully Apple can go above and beyond this and actually surprise us, give us a few extra little tweaks or bonuses. Anyway, thanks for watching. As always, if you like the video, please hit the thumbs up button. If you've not already done so, if you could subscribe and also share on your social media platforms, it does help the channel out quite a lot. Thank you very much for watching.